everyone, and welcome to We Go Back. I'm your host, Bryan Abou Chacra, and on this week's episode, we will be reviewing There's No Place Like Home Part 2, the finale for Season 4 of Lost. We pick up from the end of Season 3, where we find Jack and Kate at the airport, and we find out in this scene that the flash forwards have all been taking place 3 years in the future. Now we catch up with Ben, who's being taken back to the chopper by Kimi and his crew. In this scene, we see him get saved by Kate and Saeed. The one thing to see from this entire scene is that Ben is a man of his word and honors the arrangement that Saeed and Kate had and gives them the helicopter and tells them to leave. We catch back up with Locke, who's trying to find the elevator to get into the Orchid Station. We find out that he is actually the reason that they lied about what happened. He tells Jack that the island needs to be protected, and the only way that they can do that and protect the people on the island at the same time is by lying about everything that happened to them since they got on the island. And Locke gets a little jab in here at the end when he tells Jack that he's good at lying to himself, so he'd be very good at lying to everybody else. It'll be easy for him. He tells Jack that he's going to perform a miracle, and Jack, with everything he's seen, he's sort of starting to break down, but I really like this specific comment at the end. Now I want to get to the comment that Miles made to Charlotte on the beach. He points out to her his confusion on why she wouldn't stay on the island when it took so long for her to get back. And I love how he responds when he's questioned, what do I mean by that? During this time, the writer's strike was in full force. Because of this, there was a huge break in the season and in a lot of shows. Many shows actually didn't come back because of the writer's strike. As a result, the writers and creators have often talked about how this didn't give them any time to write in thorough backstories for Charlotte, Daniel, and Miles. So I feel like this comment at the end of the episode from Miles is sort of them telling you that we're going to find out a little bit more about them in the next season. Now we'll return to Locke and Ben in the Orchid Station. Ben is furiously preparing something while Locke gets to watch yet another orientation video from Dharma. In this video, we find out a lot about what this station is for, but I want to bring up the Casimir effect that Dr. Edgar Halowax brings up in the video. By the way, his name is the one that's on Ben's jacket when we see him in the shape of things to come. The Casimir effect is a physical force arriving from a quantized field, like two uncharged plates. It can produce a negative region of space-time that could stabilize a wormhole and allow faster than light travel, which is essentially time travel. So I love that they put a little bit of science into this, and they really made an effort to have it tied into something more scientific rather than mystic. And this is what really makes the details in Lost so good. While all of this is going on, Kimi comes down into the actual Orchid Station and explains what that C4 that we've seen in the freighter is and why there was a radio frequency disturbance on the freighter as well. He shows them the life insurance policy. Little does he know, Ben is ruthless enough to give a shit about any of that and kills Kimi, causing a big problem for everybody on the freighter. Now we return to Faraday, who's returned to take another group with him back to the freighter, and he has a conversation here with Juliet that I really wanted you guys to pay attention to because it had a very strange tone to it, just like the one he had with Charlotte. And I hadn't noticed it before, but it almost seemed like he had a reluctance to the reactions of Charlotte and Juliet. Almost like he knew what they were going to say, and his disappointments and his comments that he made indicated that he was having a more reflective conversation rather than just trying to actually convince these people and being disappointed when he's not able to. I wonder if this was some form of time skipping for Daniel, because since Desmond solved his constant problem, it seems as though Daniel's a lot more clear-headed than he was when he couldn't even remember 3 cards. Everything he says to Charlotte and Juliet seems very now or never, and it's almost like they missed a chance. Now I want to talk about the scene in the helicopter before Sawyer jumps out, where he whispers something into Kate's ear. You can actually hear it pretty well. What he says to Kate is, "I got a daughter in Albuquerque. If you find her, tell her I'm sorry." And then in what seems like a very noble action, jumps out of the helicopter to help them save gas. Now let's talk about the scene where Saeed comes to Hugo at Santa Rosa Mental Facility to talk about Jeremy Bentham's death. Now I want to take the time to kind of address who Jeremy Bentham is. He also also is another philosopher, in this case, an English philosopher, and he is the founder of modern utilitarianism, and he was influenced by John Locke and David Hume. And just so you know what utilitarianism is, it considers the interests of all beings equally. Now I want to get to the scene in the freighter where we see Michael's last moments. We see him send away Jin. Then we do also see Christian appear to Michael in the freighter and relieve him of his duty. He tells him that he can go now. If there was any doubt about the mysticism in this show, I think it's very clearly being proven here that when people aren't meant to die, they don't. Now I want to talk about our flash forward where we see Sun approach Widmore about the island, telling him that she wants to go back because they both have common interests on that island. It's great that Lost starts writing themes for the next season for you to think about in the season finales. This is what makes their show and their writing so much better than most other TV in general, especially at the time, because they took the time to plan things out, to give you things to think about for the off season, something to discuss to keep you excited. And this is what makes this podcast so much fun to do with you guys, because when I get your emails and I get to read your thoughts and theories, it's really one of my favorite things and reminds me about how the show was when it first came out. So you know the drill. Email me, wegobackpodcast@gmail.com with anything that you might have. Now we'll return to the Orchid, where we find that the torch is being passed from Ben to Locke in a very sincere moment from Ben, where he says, "I trust that you will be a better leader than I was." And this leads into a closing of a chapter for both Ben and John. John finally has his purpose, and we actually get to watch him finally be accepted into the others, which is something Locke has wanted his entire life. These people finally look up to John, and Ben finally gets to do something for the island. He goes down into this ice chamber and finds a big-ass donkey wheel, which when he turns, causes the sky to light up and turn purple the same way it did when Desmond turned the key in the hatch. And then it shows us the perspective from the helicopter, which is exceptionally important when you consider everything in this episode. We get to see the miracle that Locke had promised Jack earlier on in the episode. And it's really important for Jack to have to see the miracle to happen, otherwise he wouldn't believe it. We remember from earlier seasons, and one of my favorite quotes from the show, where Locke asks Jack why he finds it so hard to believe. And that's because Jack can't take a leap of faith. And his response is really great when you consider everything we know about Locke. Why do you find it so easy? And we know now that Locke is amenable to coercion because he was profiled that way by the FBI. So it's almost as if these two pieces were built to play together. And that's why it's important for Jack to have seen the island disappear. After they crash, I love that Hurley is the one who actually calls Jack out on his bullshit. Jack doesn't want to believe that the island was moved. He still tries to say that didn't happen. Hurley sticks to his guns and saying, "Dude, there's only water around us and there was an island here before. You really can't deny that fact." Locke did what he said he was going to do. The island is clearly moved, which makes Jack realize almost reluctantly that they do have to lie about what happened to the people they left behind. So one way or another, Locke was right, and they need to protect the island. They do finally get rescued by Penny's boat, and I really love this reunion between Penny and Des. We've been on this journey with these folks for 2 seasons now, been on their ups and downs, so to see them finally be together, and I love that Desmond finally realizes she is his constant, and he will never leave her again. This will take us back into our flash forward, which I guess we've now caught up in on time, so this is current time. We find Jack returning to the funeral home where Jeremy Bentham lies, and Ben meets him there and gets Jack to agree that they do need to go back to the island. But we're told that the island needs all of them to come back. And in the final reveal, we realize that Jeremy Bentham is John Locke. And this is really cool that they gave us that clue earlier on in the episode. So they kind of lead you right into it because John Locke was a heavy influence on Bentham. Folks, as always, if you want to email me wegobackpodcast@gmail.com with anything that you want to discuss about the show. You can follow me on Twitter @KingLordBryan. Next episode, we will be reviewing Because You Left and The Lie. Looking forward to hearing what you folks got to say about that. And until next week, see you later.